Hey everyone, I'm Nicole. Welcome back to Clockwork Kitchen, where I teach you all the basics that recipes don't. Today we're going to be talking about knives, and this is a two-part series. So in this one, I'm going to talk about what knives you actually need, and in the next one, I'm going to show you how to use those knives. There are a lot of different combinations out there, especially in those wooden blocks that you've seen where they have like 18 different knives at Bed Bath & Beyond or Target or in wedding registries galore. And it is really a personal preference in a way, but I firmly believe that you only need 3 knives. That's right, 3. Just a quick disclaimer that I know steak knives often come in those wooden blocks, but this video is not really going to talk about steak knives because I really think of those as part of your silverware drawer. So we're not talking about knives that you use to eat, we're talking about ones that you use to prepare food. Okay, back to the video. So the first knife that you need is a chef's knife. This is going to be your all-purpose, everyday knife. If you don't even want to buy 3, you just want to buy 1, this is the one to get. It should be 6 inches long and about 2 inches wide, and the blade should definitely be wider than your handle, and it should come to a point at the top. If it's really long or too skinny, especially if the blade is only as wide as the handle, it's going to feel really awkward when you try to cut with it. Your wrist is going to keep hitting against the counter and you're just not going to get the right movement out of it. Plus, at that point, you might be dealing with something closer to a carving knife, and we really want a chef's knife here. Your chef's knife should also have a pretty good weight and heft to it. And I know this can feel really scary. I remember the first time that I held a really heavy chef's knife for the first time, I was kind of like, how do I cut with this thing? But you just want to move slowly and take your time, and you need that weight. If it's too thin or too flimsy, it might literally fly off the handle, and that weight is going to give you the force that you need to cut a butternut squash or a sweet potato or really sturdy things like that. Don't forget that in the next video, I'm going to show you how to hold a knife and how to cut with this, so hopefully that should make you feel a little bit more comfortable. An alternative to a chef's knife is called a santoku. This is basically a Japanese version of a chef's knife. You'll see that it looks a little bit different. It has a flatter blade and it curves down instead of up. And these tend to be a little bit lighter and also cheaper. The first one that I got, which I think I got it because a lot of chefs on the Food Network were using it, and so I thought, this is the knife that I'm supposed to use. I got a set of like 3 of them for $30 at Bed Bath & Beyond, and I still actually have it. It's, not the best knife that I own, but it's still usable. So this is a really good beginner knife if you're just not ready to jump straight into a chef's knife. The second knife that you want to get is called a paring knife, and this kind of looks like a mini chef's knife. The length and width can vary a little bit. You'll see that we have 2 here because we're cooking obsessed people, and so one of them is wider and shorter, the other one is a little bit skinnier and longer. They both work great. It's all down to your personal preference. The blade should be at least 3 inches long. I don't know if I've seen one that's much shorter than that, but you don't want to get too short because then you're just not going to get the same use out of it. And you definitely want to make sure that the blade is at least as wide as the handle. If it's skinnier than the handle, then you're getting into boning knife territory, which is a totally different thing. A paring knife is really great when you want to cut small foods, especially when a chef's knife feels a little bit excessive. They can be used a little bit interchangeably, like for example, when you're cutting, a green onion or a cucumber, but when you don't already have a chef's knife dirty and you just want to cut something small, a paring knife is a great go-to. We use it a lot in the morning when we're cutting cucumbers and cheese for our breakfast. The third knife that you need is called a bread knife. These come in a couple different shapes as well, but they tend to be long and rectangular, about 6 to 10 inches long, so longer than your chef's knife. You can see this one is a little bit more of a traditional shape with a very long, thin, rectangular blade with the blade about as wide as the handle. We have one that's a little bit different. It looks a little bit closer to a chef's knife in terms of shape, and we like it because we can just get a better handle on it. But the most important factor in a bread knife is serration. This serration is going to allow you to cut into things like bread, obviously, but it's also really good for cutting things like tomatoes or anything where the skin or the outside is really sturdy and it's going to give you a lot of resistance when you try to cut into it. So with something like bread or a tomato, unless you have a really sharp chef's knife, that blade is gonna meet enough resistance against that skin that you might actually end up smushing down the thing that you're trying to cut, and in some cases you might not even be able to cut into it depending on how dull your blade might be. A bread knife is going to pierce the skin first with those little points in the serration and allow you to make a nice clean cut so that you end up with beautiful tomato slices rather than mush all over your cutting board. There are a couple different kinds of serration, so you'll see on this one, this is actually a steak knife, but it's a pretty traditional type of serration that you'll see in a lot of bread knives with this sort of half moon shape with the points poking down. Ours is kind of the opposite of that. We have the half moons facing outward, but it works just as well. You also might see this kind of serration on a lot of knives. It's a much smaller one, and actually when you look at it from far away, it actually might not look like there's any serration on it at all. This still works fine, but it might not cut into really, really thick crusts of bread or things like that. In general, you want to make sure that your knife has a really good serrated edge on it. How many times can I say serration in one video? You may have noticed that all the knives we're talking about today are made of stainless steel, and this is because stainless steel is the most home cook friendly type of knife material. I really hope that you're taking care of your knives, but stainless steel can handle a bit of wear and tear. It tends to be pretty easy to sharpen, and it's also rust resistant because there's some chromium in the blade. Stainless steel is definitely a material where you get what you pay for, but even with a cheaper knife like my Santoku, it'll still last you quite a while. A lot of home cooks also have ceramic knives, and if you have them and you love them, then more power to you. But if you're trying to figure out what knives to buy, I would recommend against ceramic knives. Ceramic knives tend to be lighter, and they also tend to stay sharper than stainless steel, but once they dull down, and they do eventually dull, it's really hard to resharpen those ceramic knives. And the other thing to keep in mind is that ceramic is brittle, so that means it just isn't going to handle as much wear and tear, especially if you're cutting into something really hard, or if you drop the knife, you're more likely to chip the blade or even shatter it. The thing to keep in mind really with ceramic is that it just might not last as long as a stainless steel knife will. A stainless steel one you could have for years and years, potentially pass it on to your kids. A ceramic knife is going to have just a much shorter lifespan than that. You might also see some knives labeled as carbon steel or some other kind of non-stainless steel, and these tend to be used most often by chefs. They do stay sharper longer than stainless steel, but they also take a lot of maintenance. They don't have that chromium in there, so they're more likely to rust, and there's a lot of other things that you need to keep in mind in terms of taking care of these knives. So unless you've done your research and you know what you're getting into, stay away from the carbon steel. No matter what kind of knife you have, if there's one thing I can leave you with, it's please take care of your knives. These are such useful tools in the kitchen, and they can last you a really long time if you take care of them. So the goal here really is just to make sure that they don't rust, that they don't dull, or at least not as quickly as they might, and that they don't chip at all. So first things first, hand wash your knife, don't dishwash it. Between the water jets and the harsh detergent and all the other things that you have in your dishwasher along with that knife, it's gonna bang up against all of them when it goes through a wash cycle, and you're more likely to dull it or even potentially chip it a lot quicker than you would if you hand wash it. You also wanna make sure the knife is fully dry before you put it away, and you wanna make sure that you store it, not in a drawer where it's just banging about without any kind of protection. You either wanna put it on a magnetic strip. We got this one from IKEA for like 15 bucks, or in the wooden block if it came with a wooden block, or at least with some sort of covering, like I've seen a lot of plastic sheaths over ceramic knives, something that'll protect it and make sure that it won't dull too quickly. And if you do have a wooden block, you actually want to clean that block as well. You'd be surprised how much gunk and crap can get into those slots, and so you just want to make sure that you're cleaning that regularly. Okay, so to recap, there are 3 main knives that you need: a chef's knife, a paring knife, and a bread knife, preferably with good serration and all made of stainless steel. As I'm sure you've figured out by now, knives are such a personal preference. So go to the store, try some out, see what feels comfortable to you. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up to support my channel and hit the subscribe button and the bell icon down below to be notified next time I post. Don't forget that this is a 2-part series, so in the next one I'm going to show you how to hold these knives and how to cut with them. Also, I am basing all of these videos off of what you guys want, so please be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know what it is that you're struggling with, what do you have questions about, and I'll make a video about it. Thanks so much for watching Clockwork Kitchen, and I'll see you next time.